All right, good morning and welcome to the Capital Improvement and Planning Committee meeting for Monday, June 24th, 2024. It is 8:31 a.m. First order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from last meeting. Were there any questions or comments on what Steve prepared?
I think we are just missing a listing of the minutes at the bottom, or at least that's the only thing I saw, if that's correct.
That is a good catch. All right, then I will move that we approve the minutes with the addition of the list of items referenced. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Jeff?
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Steve?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
All right, so that's a 401 vote on that. Brian's over here. Next item is Neary Building Committee status. We're going to have very formal status updates coming up, but I just would be remiss not to use this opportunity to mention that there will be a status update for the community via Zoom tomorrow night at 8 p.m. It will be recorded, so if you don't want to join live, but there is that opportunity. It is quickly coming down the road where there will be items to really be shared and for the public to actually react to, as opposed to theoretical examples. So we're going to use that opportunity tomorrow night and then gauge where the community wants to go from there. So it'll be recorded if you can't join. There's an opportunity to pre-submit questions if you have questions on your mind. But obviously, given the importance of capital and that overall process and seeing the bigger picture, I expect that there would be some sort of formal presentation back to this committee, probably with the select board and advisory once it gets, a little closer to having something definitive to talk about. Questions? Okay. Next item is there was a memo from the schools regarding ARPA fund reallocation. They went to the select board, who sent it to us. Because it is capital in greater than $10,000 and involves candidly projects that are not on the capital plan themselves. So I didn't know if anyone had any questions, comments, feedback on their request. If we vote yes, it'll go to the select board and then they will discuss whether they want to reallocate the ARPA funds or not. If we vote no, then I think it becomes a question for the select board. What do they want to do? Our vote is advisory in nature, but we're trying to comply with the capital policy. So I'll open it up for questions, comments, or feedback. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little off the ARPA playbook on this one, from anything the committee ended up discussing. I think my question is a little bit, why weren't they on the capital budget, or why weren't they proposed before now? Just given that it seems like, if it's routine maintenance, it should be there. If the roof's having problems, it'd be nice to know. And I gather these are if I remember correctly, these are the preschool floors. So I'm wondering what the problem was and where the problem with the floor stems from, if we need to be doing repairs. What precipitated that? But it is within the purview of the select board to do what it wishes with the ARPA funds. So,
Are there other comments or feedback? Brian, I didn't get a chance to talk to you ahead of time, but I kind of would like your view from not only on this one, but the next one. It falls in the same bucket, right? Of there's available funds to fund these two items, but all these items we're talking about today are really not on the capital plan. And I don't know if you have any general reaction to kind of the process, or like, are we opening a can of worms here that's going to be tough to pull back if we keep, going down this road, as opposed to, I'd say the school items sound like repairs, not items that would typically be capital in nature. versus the next one we're going to get to is obviously just a new asset that is not on the capital plan. So I'd appreciate any comments from you before we, put this to a motion and a vote.
No, I totally agree with you that I think the school one maybe falls in a little differently. At least that's the way I look at it. So I agree with that comment. And I'm personally, I'm not really in favor of doing these type of things off capital plan because it's going to be really important in the next few years that we have a solid capital plan and it stays as close to where it should be as it can. So, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but that's just where I come down on it.
And do the schools have any ability to access John Parent's facilities maintenance fund? I'm not saying, but like, is there any limitation statutorily or how that language is?
I think they could. You're right. It would be something new. I'm not sure how John would feel about that, but
I understand.
yes, I, as far as legally, yes, you could.
So, any other reactions from the committee?
Yeah, I guess I'll react. Yeah, I mean, I was on that ARPA committee. I guess I just sort of object in principle to how these funds are being used these days. And so, I mean, I'm going to vote no, just because on principle, I think this is not the way they were supposed to be used. We're several years down the road. The funds weren't, they were, recommendation was made, but, so many of the recommendations aren't being followed. And now it's just being used as a slush fund, it feels like. So that's my comment.
I mean, what else would they use it for at this point? I mean,
well, they've been using it to fund new capital items, right? So most of the things that, right, and this may still go to Tony's fundamental, and Joe was on that committee too, right? So I think this may go to Tony's fundamental disconnect between where they left it and where it ended up going, but they've been using what I'd call the term tax relief, right? Each year, they've been looking at things that we've approved as capital and that the select board and advisory were in favor of. And instead of bringing those to town meeting, they just funded them in the moment through ARPA, and they've used tax relief, which was a priority of the ARPA committee, right? We can go 10 different ways on that, right? But like that's how they've explained it, right?
Yeah.
I'm actually, well, I think the work needs to be done. I think it's a dangerous precedent to set, so I'm going to be a no on this too. But I just want to caution everyone, when I make the motion, I'm going to make the motion in the affirmative, just so we know, like that's typically how you do it. So just so everyone's on the same page, I just think we can certainly work with Greg, Becky, and the team there to figure out like how to get this work done. But there's two very distinct projects that this capital committee really pushed forward, right? And thankfully they did a great job and brought them in under budget, right? We need to get in the habit of not just taking that and spending it elsewhere, right? Like there is some benefit to having. So approaching it very differently than you, Tony, but getting to the same answer, because it wasn't on the ARPA committee, but that was kind of my initial reaction to this, because it wasn't like there was another, that the Finn HVAC got more out of control than we thought it was, right? And that's what they're looking to repurpose it for. These are two very distinct things. So,
well, Jason, a question though, in terms of like, when does this all need to be allocated by, all this money? Like, are we just
the end of 24, and there is no shortage. I think we're just opining from a capital perspective. The select board can still allocate it, but we're saying this is a project that's greater than 10K that's just coming to us in June, and it's not on the capital plan, and there needs to be a better plan in general to have repairs and maintenance. And I'm not seeing anything in here about safety either. At least that's not considered there.
Yeah, I think as long as they commit to using that money so we don't throw it out the window, I think that would be my preference. Let's not just bite our nose to spite our face, right? Let's not flush the 58,000 out the.
Oh, no, I mean, Brian, you correct me if I'm wrong. There's more than enough things lined up for that. And it may be for this project, but I think this isn't following the process.
Right.
It's not gonna go down the tubes, Jeff.
I agree. I just want to make sure that's.
Yeah. Brian, is that an accurate statement?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay.
We
All right.
also do have a fall town meeting coming up where money could be allocated directly.
All right, Joe, I saw your hand go up and down, but I heard your comment, so I'm gonna move that capital support the ARPA funding reallocation request submitted by the Southborough schools.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Jeff,
No.
Steve,
No.
Tony,
Sorry, no.
Joe,
No,
and I'm a no, so that's a unanimous no. Next is request from the DPW regarding a tailgate spreader using FY24 operating budget to pay for this. So Bill, you saw the email that Bill had sent me. I included a attachment to it regarding the quote that he got, which he did note was a little dated. So I'll just open it up for questions, comments, or feedback. This is not on the capital plan.
yeah, I fall in that where, where's the money coming from? Again, if there's some money for extra equipment in there, I'm also interested to know, it says it would offset maybe some labor costs. So I'm wondering if that is somehow also how that money would be created. But I'm a little interested in how this is being processed.
My understanding was he's looking to use the FY24 operating budget, which expires in 6 days, to do this. So he's saying he has the money in his operating budget, but obviously this is an item that is greater than the capital policy, so he can't just go and buy it. I imagine, Brian, it would require some sort of not a budget transfer, but he'd probably have a memo to the select board because his budget line item would be off because wherever he's going to put it.
correct.
Okay. Steve, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I would just question, it's obviously a dated quote. I don't see anything for delivery either. It says not installed. But it's coming from Londonderry, New Hampshire. If there's delivery charges on top of that, probably would like to know if there was anything over that 13.4.
Did we lose
Go
Jason?
ahead, Tony.
I was wondering if you were still there. Your video's not moving.
I see I'm frozen. I'm still here, so I'm just going to keep going. I'll just turn my video off. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So there are other comments on that?
Jason, on this email, it said encumbered some of our operating expenses. Is his intention to use all of this from his operating fund, or is there some other piece?
I don't think he has any other funds to use, right? He can't use another capital item that was approved in another town meeting and just reallocate it. You can't do that. So it'd have to come. I interpret it. I see what you're saying, Jeff, in this note. I interpret it as he's trying to use it before the end of June, because I did have some back and forth with him and include that just confirm the urgency of the request, essentially. All right, so I've heard Joe kind of wants to see what the labor offset. I'm of the view, and Brian checked me on this, is this is probably even a worse precedent to set by using operating funds for capital items. And someone said it earlier, we have a fall town meeting coming up. So he could certainly submit that as part of the request and just turn back that money as part of the free cash process. And then hopefully we would be able to allocate this from free cash if it was a an item that the taxpayers wanted to support. And really that allows him to come and make a formal presentation. He did offer to come do that, but again, being 6 days from the end of the fiscal year, I have some hesitation on that. I think if there's budget savings, it should go back. He should be recognized for not spending where he didn't need to spend, and then come back as part of our formal capital process, which is actually going to be the next step on our agenda. That's where I'm at. Fundamentally, I think I'm convinced that we probably should do this, and operationally, I think we've seen Bill take a different approach, but I'm not ready to do it under duress.
Agreed.
Other commentary? All right, I'm going to move that capital support the request from the DPW department to spend FY24 operating funds on the tailgate spreader.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, Jeff,
No.
Steve,
No.
Tony,
No.
Joe,
No.
and I'm a no. So that does not pass either. All right. We are headed into the summer months, which actually is usually when we start our capital process. So what I wanted to do is align with the committee now on dates and work with Brian to get a note out. As you can recall, last year's process was incredibly frustrating, not necessarily because the department heads weren't doing their job. There just was a lot of last minute submissions, a lot of late submissions. We obviously had some turnover in department heads that had key capital needs. But obviously we know there's some big decisions coming for the town. There's obviously a funding crunch, both from an operating and a capital perspective, and we need to have an accurate picture of what we're looking at. So I was planning, we typically have a hard submission deadline by the end of August. Which if we get that note out in the next week, would give the department heads 2 months to really refine their process, and then would set us up to start a regular meeting cadence with the department heads in September. We didn't really get started until much later last year, and as you all recall, like in and around the holidays, we had to make some important and tough decisions to meet the budgetary deadline, right? So I just think we need to get ahead of this, and obviously emergencies come up and we'll always deal with those, but most of the items that came into our purview were things that were well within the control. And what I was also going to offer to the department heads is obviously the opportunity to meet with any of us, right? If you know, a department head says I'd like to meet with a member of capital, we'll have a quick meeting and designate someone to go meet with DPW or fire or police or whomever to spend that, you know, over the next 2 months, just to help them get ready for their ultimate submission and get some initial back and forth going, at least from one member's perspective. So I want to make sure that plan was okay with everyone before we put it into motion with Mark and Brian.
Sounds good.
See if I'm unfrozen yet. Probably not. All right. Is there any public comment? Is there any other business anyone wants to conduct this morning? All right, I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, Jeff,
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And I am I as well. Have a good evening or day, everyone.
Have a good day. Good week.
See ya.